Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. Well, I thought I'd make this video comparing 289 heads and GT40 heads and the GT40P head, which really, they're not 289. They're a 1970 302, but they're so close to a 289 head. I'm going to reference these as a 289 head because the small combustion chamber 289 hypo head has anywhere from a 53 to a 55 combustion chamber. So for anybody wanting to bring compression up, they would surely be the head to go with. And it leads me into this segment here for one reason, and that's because they were doing flow numbers on YouTube the other night, and the guy said to throw away the 289 heads because they're really not a good head because they don't flow enough to make any power. Well, if they don't flow enough to make any power, my question is this. On a standard motor, why the 289 hypo have 271 horsepower and a 302 only had 235 horsepower? And that's the performance one with the GT40. A 302 had 225 with the E7 heads. So I did a little scale on this, and it's like this here. If you take the 289 head and put on a 302, you'd have basically 288 horsepower. And that's stock. That's not doing any work to them. So if you were to port them and get the flow numbers up, like everybody's really concerned about with flow numbers, then you're talking probably another 40 horsepower, just taking a stab at it. I would say at least that, depending how they're done and what camshaft you're running. But the only difference between the 289 hypo and a 302 roller motor is basically the camshaft difference and the compression difference. It would be 10-1 on a 289 hypo engine, and it would be roughly, well, they say 9-1 on 302. And you know what I said about that. It's really not that much. It's a little bit less, but we'll just say 9-1 to keep it easy. So then it comes down to this. The only difference is really is in the camshaft, which is 477 on a 289. That's the lift. And then the lift on a 302 is 444. So if you put a 1.7 rocker on that, it's going to be about 50, 60, 70, about 470 lift. Some people say 480. I don't know. Depends what math book you're using, I guess. But I'm hoping this will give somebody an idea here, because what people don't realize, you take the 289 head, put it on a 302, you're going to have around 10-1 compression. I haven't figured it out to the exact what it would be, but the reason I'm doing this video, guys, because of this reason. A guy on YouTube was saying to just not bother with the 289 head because they don't flow enough, not to even waste your time with them. Well, fellas, here we go again. I'm going to let you guys know a little secret. Every one of these heads right here, fellas, can run 11 seconds. And the only difference would be is if you're using a power adder, then the smaller the combustion chamber, the more crucial it is as far as your timing with like the nitrous or a turbo, whatever you'd be using, because you have a faster burn with a smaller combustion chamber. When you run the power adder, you usually want to use a combustion chamber that has a slower burn. You actually want to slow the burn down. So that is something people don't really keep in mind too often when they think about what they want to do. It's usually on the side of compression and flow numbers. So that's why I see people go by. But when I'm speaking, fellas, this is on a flat top standard 302. This isn't about building something to accommodate the head. Because if you're putting a piston in something and taking it as you're building it from scratch, you could actually use any Ford head. You could use a low compression head and it would actually breathe better than these heads do. Some guys don't want to hear that because they don't believe that, but even the E6 head could run 11 seconds if you do the right stuff to it. If you clean up all the areas in it and make it where the valves are not shrouded, it's just they take more work. So it all depends what you're wanting to do, fellas, and how much time you're willing to put in them. The only thing bad about an E7 head or any of these type steel heads, they take time. Some need more work than others. Some have a better designed combustion chamber. But as far as performance goes, you can do anything with either one of these heads. You're talking probably, I'm not going to go with flow numbers. I'm going to go with times I've seen people run with these heads and what we've run with them. You're talking probably 0.2 difference between the best head that Ford put out and the worst one, with their ported right and their have the right things done. And the only reason that would be, in my opinion, is because if you take notice, like the 289, well, it's a 302 head, fellas, but 289 is the same way, have a very shallow valve. They're very shallow in the bowl area, and there's not a whole lot of room at the top where you can really kind of get away with stuff more. In the GT40s, they're a lot deeper. There's more pocket area. They breathe better. Same deal on the intake side. There's not as much air can move around because they're shallow. Where the GT40 head, a lot deeper. So outside of that, in the valve design, with the way you'd have the angles on, whatever angle you'd have on, and what size valve you went with, the short side would be the only thing difference as far as flow numbers. That's according to if you get the intake runners around the same size. So, if every head would go in the 11s, why would you bother saying one isn't as good as the other because of flow numbers? I'll go by what works, fellas. And what I wanted to show you guys is this. You might see a kind of a trend here on this, fellas. I've been using that word a lot lately. I round the tops off a lot on these cylinder heads. That's what I do to them. I think they work better like that. I think the more area you can do to the roof, the better. They say you can't make air go where it doesn't want to go. But what you can surely do is make it go where it wants to go, and that's to the top. Hot air wants to rise. So I'm a firm believer in raising the roof on all the heads that I do. And I've never seen it hurt a thing. It's always seemed like the stuff that I do when I take the time to do these things, every engine seems like it runs extremely well. And these are heads I started on back in the day, guys. These have been laying around. These were gonna get used on like a, well, if you want to consider a sleeper car type thing. But never got around to it. Never used them. But I would like to use them on something someday. But this is just one of them deals, fellas. I wanted to bring this up because the guy was on the YouTube, knew what he was talking about with flow numbers and stuff, and he was on the kind of the right page with this. But there's nothing worse than telling somebody that, hey, I'm going to use a pair of 289 heads, and then you think, oh, well, they don't flow enough to make any power. I'm not using them, and you're listening to somebody because they have a big flow bench there. And then it makes you have second thoughts. So that's why I'm doing this, fellas. I'm trying to let it be where you guys decide yourself and have something else to go by besides flow numbers. Because I go by horsepower numbers, I go by how something runs, and the 289 head, like I said, they're on the small side, or a 302/70 style head. But guys, they'll run with anything out there. They'll make the same power if you do them right. And I don't know where these guys come from saying, hey, don't waste your time with these heads over a flow number. You cannot be going by these flow numbers like these guys keep telling you to go by, because it's misleading. This is what I say on my videos, why it's so misleading, guys. So, I'm going to make this really simple. On a stock engine, you put these on, it would go anywhere from 13.0 to 12.0, depending if you did the fuel, any kind of combination, a camshaft, if you wanted to add a cam. But even on a stock roller 302, these heads will easily, well, in my book, would run 11s actually. But I don't want to tell somebody that, have them throw them on their car and they run 13.0. So that's why I gotta be careful, because I want somebody listening to me and say, I did what that guy said and all I did is go 13s. Because that's how it works. You have to do combinations. But as far as heads go, you're not going to slow down putting these on. If you do the stuff to these heads, to pour them the right way, and it's not a crazy pour, it's just getting rid of all the bad areas, like anything else. That's all you have to do, guys. A good cleanup most of the time. People think you have to go crazy. I do things on the extreme side for myself, only because I'm after crazy numbers. And sometimes I don't know if that's going to be good or bad. I'm going to be annihilating a pair of heads to try to go 9 seconds. Do I know for sure what I'm going to do to them heads is going to help it all the way? I know the stuff I do does help, but some of the things I'm going to be doing to these heads for the 9-second car, that's not going to be anything people's going to want to see on YouTube, because it's against everything almost that you would want to hear about as far as heads. You'd think I'm lost my mind. And it's just one of them deals. I'm going to try to be really extreme, aggressive on them, and that's how that's going to be. And I'm just, like I said, I want to make sure you guys get the right information so you know what you're really doing, because the last thing you need is somebody say them heads cannot make power and you happen to have a pair of 289 heads or a pair of these early 302 heads. So that's why it's important, fellas, for me to do these videos. I'll let you guys make up your own mind. I'm going to tell you what I think, and then you can listen to what other people think, and then you guys can make up your own mind what you think. Because what you think is what's important, fellas. I'm just trying to give you the other side of the coin. That's all I'm trying to do, fellas, is to offset something you might hear with flow numbers. But I'm going to give you time numbers, fellas. I'm going to give you real track time. I know guys back in the day that ran these heads, and they ran the Windsor heads, 351 Windsor heads. They ran almost the same times, guys. Like the car, one car would go 1140, the other car would go 1160. One would be in a Pinto, one would be in a Maverick. So you talk two different cars, but you talk and the combinations would be almost the same. So for 0.2 difference, and one car is probably 300 or 400 pounds lighter than the other one, it brings it to be about equal. So my point is that it isn't like one's going to kill the other one. Not with the right camshaft and the right stuff done to it, guys. So I'm hoping this is going to help you guys out a little bit. I wanted to go through all the heads, but I can barely keep track doing this segment with 3. I wanted to do the 351 Windsor heads lined up and go right on down the forward line, but that would just be too much for me to do without no way of having to be able to edit it, because I know I would surely mess up on that segment. I'm having a hard enough time with this one, guys, trying to keep my mind straight and make sure I do this and tell you guys what's right, and not mislead you on anything. That's the last thing I want to do to you fellas. I want to know when I tell you something that is something that's at least true that I know of. So that's what it's all about, guys. And I know a few of you fellas had these heads. That's why I'm doing this segment, because I don't want you thinking, well, I turned this other guy on YouTube and he says they're not worth it and I'm not going to use them. So like I said, it depends what you're trying to do, fellas. If you're just trying to go upgrade and have a little bit more compression, then that'd be a good way to go. That's my opinion. And that's why I took the time to do this segment, like I said. And that's what's important to me, to pass this stuff on to you fellas. But anyway, guys, there you have it. So use your opinion, do your homework, and more important than anything, do what you think is best for your build. All right, guys, have a good night and take care.